Good evening.
Good evening.
It's 7 o'clock. Here we are. Here we are. Let's start off the evening with some centered awareness, some prayer, some spiritual mind treatment, whatever you want to call it. Whatever gets you into that place of being perfectly present right here, right now. Stepping into that awareness. Let everybody just get settled for a sec. Right here in this moment, I recognize that there is a power for good in the universe. And I can use it. And in fact, I am using it. As each and every one of us is using it, whether we're using it consciously, subconsciously, it is always being used by each and every one of us, for it is the very core of our presence on this experience of life on planet Earth. I trust and know that there is only this one power, this one perfect creative source of all things. It is infinite, it is perfect, it is always evolving and unfolding for our highest good. I trust this and I know this. And this is the point at which I claim right here, right now, that this experience tonight unfolds perfectly, for it is unfolding perfectly right here and right now. That each of us comes to a deeper place of wisdom in our own personal way, in our own individualized way. We each allow wisdom to intuit through us for the highest good of each and every one of us. I claim this for good. Each of us tapping into that pure intuitive nature that is at the core of our expression, the core of our beingness. And this is all that shows up. And it is easy and graceful, and it is respectful, and it is filled with compassion. And this is how this evening unfolds. I trust this to be so. And in this perfect place of trust, I give great gratitude for it, knowing that the word spoken right here, right now, is a word that is done. It is complete in the very speaking of it. And so I simply allow it to unfold, stepping out of the way of any attachment to outcome. I step back, I let go, I release, I allow. I know it is so. And together we say, and so it is. Hello.
Hello.
So, I may have a lot more energy tonight than I did even last week.
So are you on speed now?
No. No, last week I actually had not had a day off yet, and this week I finally have had 2 days in a row off. So, so I feel rejuvenated.
Excellent.
So yeah, I may have a little more energy.
Great.
Which some people may think is impossible.
And I say bring it on.
Bring it on! So let's start off tonight with talking about tithing. Since you've now been theoretically tithing for 14 days, what's coming up for people with respect to tithing? Yes, Charose.
I'm finding it very helpful that you have the columns. It makes it so very easy.
Great.
You know, so thank you very much. And I've started my July, making my table for July. And I intend to, at the end of that period, disperse the money.
Okay. That's great. Great. Yeah, mine goes in chunks a little bit, you know, because with my pre-auth, that's part of my tithing, so I also like look ahead and I think, well, you know, I've got to balance. I mean, I'm balancing it all out. That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Well, you know when money's coming in, you know it's there, but sometimes money comes in and you take it for granted. Like I'm talking about smaller bits, and I'm thinking, oh, I have to put that on my worksheet.
Yeah.
So it's I forget sometimes. I forget that there's actually other stuff coming in that I wasn't really aware of.
Yeah, that's why I
It's
like.
interesting, yeah.
That's why I like doing that worksheet, because it really does get you really clued into. If you find a quarter on the street, write down 25 cents.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
it doesn't work in reverse, so that unexpected expenses. Does it?
That's another book.
Well, you know, her theory about unexpected expenses is on some level that is,
You're not-
you know, if you've not been in the tithing consciousness,
Yeah.
that there's the universe in some way taking
takes
it back.
it away.
Do I totally agree with that? Not me personally. I don't really buy that, but that's what she believes. So, thank you. Yes.
Well, I did share with you last Sunday that I had work 3 months ago. Like I freelance, and then I work, let's say today, and in 3 months they pay me. So I totally, I was debating. I had received the checks that I had worked for the last 3 months, which it didn't start on June the 5th that we started the course. So yeah, I had that question if I would tie that or not, because the money
So-
arrived, but I worked 3 months before for that. So
So she asked me, and she didn't like the answer I gave her.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go and ask someone who knows.
What was the answer you gave her?
I said, of course, it's money coming in now. Of course, you have to tithe on it.
Yeah. Did you tithe on it when you did the work?
did I? Oh no.
Well then,
No, because I didn't know about tying 3 months ago.
all right.
Did.
But now
So now the
I'm
money
counting.
come
I think
in.
it's
Has come in. So you tithe on it.
yeah.
When in doubt, tithe.
When down, that's time.
Yes.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Well, one thing I really appreciate about doing this, and there are days that for example, yesterday I didn't put down the amount, and it keeps you in the now,
Yeah.
and it keeps you focused on not just the now, but depending on how you're choosing to feel around that money and releasing it. It keeps you joyful, it keeps you in anticipating the good in the future. And it's also interesting how we may have this little sort of worldly figuring out as to whether it's appropriate to die on this or not. I mean, it's a little drama in its own way, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah, which is why I think she says, when in doubt, tithe. When in doubt, tithe. And here's, why do you think that is? I mean, really, why do you think that is? When in doubt, tithe.
because if there is difficulty around this, then you're having an obstruction in itself.
There you go.
Well, also, if you want generosity, be generous.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It opens the flow. That's right. You know, here's what you're telling the universe if you're trying to find the loophole. Please restrict my flow, because I'm going to restrict the flow to the universe because I'm trying to find a loophole. Like, when do I not need to tithe, right? No. If you are open and you're in the place of trust, it's kind of being in the place of trust, which I talked about on Sunday. Falling back and trusting that you are always upheld and supported by something that is greater than you. No matter what. When you when you've fallen into that place of trust, the whole world opens up to you in magnificent ways. And that's why because tonight is all about forgiveness. Forgiveness for some people is just as hard as taking on a tithing consciousness.
So
Yes.
I've challenged myself. So not only am I tithing 10% on whatever comes in, but I'm also taking 10% again for myself.
So you're now tithing 20%, 10% to where you're spiritually
Yeah.
nourished, and 10% for yourself.
To spend on whatever I want to spend on.
Okay.
And not, so I don't feel guilty about it.
Yeah. A lot of people engage in that
Yeah,
practice.
and it's challenging.
Yeah.
It's definitely challenging.
Well, if you're taking it right off the top,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
place of fear that a lot of people
Yeah.
will go to is, wow, I have to live off of 80%.
Yeah, yeah.
But look at it this way too. look at all the stuff that you have been spending on
Already.
already
Yeah.
that is beyond what you really need to survive. I guarantee you it's at least 10%, if not more.
So I'll
Yeah.
share, because
Mhm.
I was having a bit of a struggle on Sunday morning. There were two checks that sort of were kind of unexpected, and they were rather large. And I Saturday night I'm sitting and I'm going, oh crap.
Use exact word.
I did, yeah. I'm trying not to swear so much. I went, oh, this is a larger amount than I'm a little comfortable with. So I slept on it. I was, no, you made a commitment. So I slept on it, got up the next morning, I left early for service, I went to the bank and got the cash. And it was funny, so I'm telling Christina when I got in here, I said, I'm struggling with this a little bit. So I filled out my envelope, but I didn't fill in the amount. I'm going, okay, so then Christina and I were talking, I said, okay, I just have to, I'm filling in, putting the money in it, and I'm sealing it, it's done. I felt better after it, but I had a struggle. I don't think I'll have a struggle going forward. I don't, well, we'll see, I don't know. But because it was right off the top, it was
Right.
money that I hadn't paid any, it was money I have to pay taxes on, but that came in without having any taxes removed.
Mhm.
And I'm going, it was challenging. It was challenging.
It can be a gulper.
Yeah, it can be a gulper.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did, Carmen.
I've had that experience. I've had the experience of going, oh my gosh. Oh, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. Is it a lot of money?
Well, no, because I want more than that back.
Well, yeah.
And I will get that.
and the universe doesn't recognize
I know.
great or small. Just recognizes flow. Just recognizes flow.
But the universe, no.
Well, that's important, because if I have 10 cents to die, then someone has 10 million, mine stands equal to that.
Yeah.
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 Just as important. Just as important.
It's the
It is.
feeling behind it, right? It's the conviction behind it.
Yes. Yes. And there's something that I want to talk about very quickly with respect to feeling. The feeling about tithing, because there are people who will go into tithing for one purpose,
To get back.
to get back. And it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way. I mean, you basically you're just telling the universe, I'm just going to be greedy, so I'm going to give my 10% because I want to get back, right? No, you have to be able to give freely with an open heart, with gratitude for what you have received already, and trust and know that more is coming, no matter what. No matter what.
No matter what.
No matter what. Who have I referenced in the past? I just want to see if anybody knows this. Who have I referenced in the past that used that phrase incessantly? No matter what. After every affirmation. No matter what.
What's her name?
James.
No.
What's her? Ow.
It's a man.
Oh.
It's not James.
I remember the Charles Holt?
No. I'm just curious. All right.
Okay,
It's not a big deal. It's
remember
really.
talking about it.
Yeah. Dr. Tom Costa
Right.
from the Center for Spiritual Living, Palm Desert.
I know him.
Anyway, I was just
Is
curious.
it going to be on the exam?
No, it's not going to be on the exam.
Dr. Tom Costa. You can sit next to me.
Yes.
Dr. Tom Costa.
One more.
Question number 16.
Hilarious. All right, so next question I have: are there any wins to share? Since we do want to celebrate the good things that are happening, does anybody have any wins?
Oh.
Oh, wins.
Wins, yes.
So I got an interview for the job, and I did it yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
So now that was the next win, was the actual interview.
Great.
So now I wait again, and it's a big relief knowing that the best outcome is going to come, whatever that is. So this is the first time I haven't worried which way it's going to go, because I know whatever happens, it's going to be the best outcome for all concerned.
Yeah.
So it's a big relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it great? So now I will liken this experience to having spent, I spent a lot of years in the theater, where a lot of actors, their entire life is interviewing.
Yeah, and this was an audition too, because it was a 25-minute monologue.
Exactly.
They prompted me 4 times, and I did the rest. So yeah.
But what I want to, the greatest thing that can happen to an actor, and this I do think translates to anytime you're up for an interview, if you're going up for a job, even if you have a job and you're doing something along the lines of, you're going in and you might be feeling judged, right? Stepping into your greatness, first of all, recognizing that you cannot go wrong. You cannot go wrong because of who you are.
Well, I have a
Yeah.
mini win with the
Yes.
win.
Yeah.
So I go in there and I'm thinking, like there's somebody I would love to have there with me, but they can't be there with me. But I would love to have them with me. That one person I would love to have had. The next best person was in the room with me. And I went, oh my God, a friendly face. And the other 2 people went and said, no, excuse me, 3 friendly faces. And I went, you're right. And I looked at everyone and went, you're right, 3 friendly faces.
Awesome.
And one I know.
That's awesome.
So that was the other part of the win.
That's great.
It was actually.
It's great. It was like when I went to my ministerial panel. Oh.
Were you nervous?
I was really nervous.
Why?
Well, first of all, they're going to sit and grill you on the philosophy for 45 minutes and then ask you about what is your plan for ministry. I mean, it's really...
You've never been short on words, Jonathan.
That's very true.
The sermon was only 45 minutes.
It wasn't quite long.
But part of it too is because what they really do try to set up in your ministerial panel is that you sit in front of people that you don't have a relationship with. I was really lucky in some respects because they couldn't find a panel. Because I've been so involved with the organization for so long, and I've known ministers from all over the world, that when I sat down to have my panel, here are 3 beautiful people that I do know. And they found the ones that knew me the least, but Dr. Maureen Hoyt was in there, and she was one of my teachers in ministerial. She taught when James was experiencing his cancer. She taught for several weeks in a row our ministerial class.
Wow.
So being able to sit and have that friendly face is always lovely. Also, I want to remind everybody, if you're watching online, chat in. Let us know what's going on with you. Yes.
So 3 wins.
3 wins.
3 wins, yes. The first 2 that I would like to talk about are about communication. In that I was very pleased to be able to share some complicated sort of relating with a colleague of mine in 3 different areas, and converse and speak very clearly. Then the second one was to again write a complicated, a detailed letter without getting, it flowed beautifully. I liked it, and I was able to also make a couple of wonderful statements with respect to a common organization to us, and it was received beautifully as well. So I am very glad about being able to articulate that. And the third win was on Sunday. I enjoyed my singing.
Great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I enjoy your singing too.
Okay, thank you.
I just want you to know that. It was so, do you mind if I say what happened on the last?
Sure.
So,
Okay.
when we did the performance workshop here, Shaw Rose chose to sing a song. And on the last class, where it was supposed to be the presentation, we sang together a song. And that was a definite joy for me. So, I really do enjoy your singing. It's awesome. It's great. So, one of the things I did want to say, I will get to you in just a sec. One of the things I did want to say, because I hadn't quite finished my through line of thought, was regarding actors and auditioning. That one of the things that ends up happening is when you can go in and you can claim the space with the recognition of who you are, not that you are greater than, but there is no difference between you and the person who's sitting across the table from you. When you really can go in there and just ultimately it's about just being yourself. That's a win. And regardless of the outcome, because I'll tell you, actors get turned down 90% of the time.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, if you can start to look at even when you're turned down for the role, it's a win. Because what you've got to do in that moment, and this goes in line with the four legs of the table: health, wealth, relationships, and creative expression. No matter what, if you can go in and you can engage in your creative expression, whether you're paid for it or not, that's a win. Yes.
And I was able to just further articulate to myself and to the universe what my creative expression is. So that's a win. So I'm already planting those seeds. It doesn't matter where they sprout up.
Exactly. It doesn't matter where they sprout up. Just know that they will sprout up.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, Lynn.
So I had a win this week. So I've been having this struggle with, I've been doing my business, but I also haven't given up a security of a job.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that I'm going to give it up,
Okay.
or actually reduce my hours. And I went in saying, if they don't give me what I want, I will leave. And I asked for three days a week, and they said no.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, so I'm giving you notice. And I had a little bit of fear of that, but I went through that, and I said, okay, so will you be okay with training the person that we get? No problem. So 1 week goes by, so that was last week. And the lawyer I work for is a little difficult.
Okay.
He's horrendous, actually.
Okay.
No, you know.
Yeah, he's also
okay.
horrendous.
And so this Monday they called me in, and this HR woman says, "Luna, you know you're making my life miserable."
Yeah, because it's all about
Because
her life.
It's
It
her
is.
life.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, because he's not easy to work for,
Okay.
and he actually likes me. So they negotiated with me, and they said, "Would you be willing to come in for 5 days for 4 hours a day to train someone until such time as he's okay?" And I said, "Can we make that 4 days?" And they said yes. And that's a win.
Awesome.
That's a total win.
That is a total win. Absolutely.
You got what you wanted.
Yeah.
It's also less out, it's a better deal than what you wanted in the first place.
Exactly. It's great. That's great.
4 hours done.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Anyone else?
I have a win.
All right.
I have been given the opportunity after you said on Sunday and we all did a big sigh, everything is on divine purpose. And we all went, oh. I was given the opportunity to see my landlord as God. And generally he's seen as Linus with the dust cloud flowing up behind him and everybody's in the wake of the dust cloud. And I went, okay, well, that's a belief. And we have actually had the best conversations ever in the 3.5 years that I've known him, and we're actually getting along.
Great.
Yay.
So that's a win. What?
Well, I hesitate saying this, but I had a little bit of a win this week.
Oh.
Because many of you know the saga that has been going on with my neighbor. She moved. She moved.
Totally win.
And I have to tell you, like, I woke up this morning and I was lying in my bed and I was thinking, just the energy of the entire building has shifted. And what a win that really is. You know, and I bless her and I honor her and I send her on her way. Because I do not require that in my experience anymore. For those of you who don't know, I had she was very loud and very, there was some potential abuse things happening down there that I had to call Children's Aid on. And anyway, a whole lot of stuff that was going on down in the apartment below me. And ultimately, she's now moved out and moved on, and goes on to her next thing. So I'm grateful for
But
that.
your gain is someone else's loss. She had to move somewhere else. Impose
Well,
herself on them.
I don't know that.
No.
I don't know that.
Oh.
It may be that this particular location for her was so not a workable situation for her and her daughter
Right.
that wherever she goes to may be a much better situation,
There you
and
go.
it may change the entire energy of that relationship. I don't know. I can only trust. I can only trust.
Good point.
So, yes.
This reminds me, a few years ago in practice, I appreciated that if I look, this is seeing patients, you know, and going in on a Saturday or whatever in different ways. And I appreciated that if I kept it simple and looked after myself, actually it was a win for everyone else concerned. You know, and it's interesting, universe has the capacity to create that
Mm-hmm.
and have that happen.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's a wonderful point that I'm always trying to remind people of. Self-care is first and foremost the most important thing that you must engage in. Self-care. Because if you do not care for yourself, you do not have the capacity to care for anybody else. And people tend to think it sounds selfish. You know, we are brought up in a society, we are brought up to always go and help the other first. But if you are not taking care of yourself, you cannot effectively do that. And it, you know, it's so I hit it all the time, and so it's a great demonstration that you've just illustrated of why that's important. Yeah.
In all honesty, though, have you never seen a case where by tithing first, as soon as you get the income, you were not able to take care of yourself because you had insufficient funds afterwards? Or is that just skeptics?
I've experienced it.
It does happen.
I've experienced it. And yet if you stay, so this is the next bit of the challenge. You've been tithing for 2 weeks. She suggests trying it out for 6 months. I suggested 21 days. I will suggest now, keep going beyond this and see what happens. When I first started tithing, there were times when I would take that 10% off the top and it got really scary. And I thought, how am I going to get through? What am I going to do? And then I had to fall back and say, you know what? If this is where my mind goes, it is up to me now to change the tendency of thought. Because when I change the tendency of thought from fear to faith, which is the purpose, ultimately, I'm shifting into faith. And it took me a little while. But once I fully was ingrained and totally in faith around it, I have never had a problem since. And there were times when I really did look and think, wow, I got some checks that might bounce now. And yet, the checks didn't bounce. Because I had to step back and say, I'm in charge. I am in charge of my good. Yeah.
Helen says, my win is that my ministerial studies are working out with ease and grace because of my commitment to take care of myself first.
That's great. Yeah, thank you, Helen. I had 3 hands all at the same time, but I was looking at you, so please.
Well, I've been tithing for a long time, for as long pretty much as I've been coming. Not at the same rate that I would like to, but I've just ignored it. And I've started looking at it on my credit card statement and acknowledging that although my income is very limited right now, I still elect to do this. That's part of my self-care. And a manifestation of that is I have a new friend that I met in a job search seminar who coincidentally lives 5 minutes away from me and is in true crisis. I feel really happy that I'm able to just let her cry with me and reassure her that this is her bottom and things are going to be better, concurrent with the fact that it feels like my bottom. But that's looking up. I have a small whirlwind of activity that's promising.
Great. That's fantastic.
But I just, otherwise, in past times, I would have just went, whoa, I can't cope with your over emotion. But she's really been grateful for my assistance, for my ear, and my caring, and I'm glad to be able to give it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. I will get to you, Nick.
Well, on the subject of self-care, I say something good happened. Right around the time this course started, I developed a minor health problem, and I improved my diet a fair bit. I think there's still room to go, but the big thing was I stopped craving and binging on sugary foods, and I've completely not eaten them for 2 weeks now. And I feel a lot better, and I really feel like this is something that's bothered me for a really long time. So I just want to go with this and see how far it goes.
Yeah, great. Great. Awesome. Judy.
I had a very smooth move last Wednesday,
Wonderful.
releasing 80% of my earthly belongings. It feels absolutely wonderful. They will be sold on Saturday, from which I will be able to tithe. I trust and know that the woman doing this is going to make a lot of money for both of us.
Wonderful.
And I'm living with, downsizing is a relative term. I have more than I need still, but I only have a small space now to put it in. And I can't believe I walked into that house. I live close by. I walked into that house and looked at all the stuff I have lived with for so many years. I can't believe I had all that stuff. I cannot believe it, because it's all set out now on tables. I cannot believe I lived with all that stuff. It's mind-boggling. And I feel so flipping free.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Did you know you had all that stuff?
Oh, it was there. It just wasn't.
But to see it actually.
Oh, to see it. It's like a giant gift store.
And many people are going to come and buy wonderful gifts.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's all gone. It's all gone.
It is, she's not taking
Thank
it
you.
back.
Are you?
That's what you want, right?
Oh, it has to be
Yeah,
gone.
it's
I
gone.
can't. I can't
It's
deal
all
with
gone.
it. If there's anything
It's all
left, I
gone.
can't deal with it. I just said take it. Like do something.
And there you go. It's done.
Yeah.
It's done.
It's done. All right. So it's great. It's really great. So I love celebrating the wins. All right, another trivia question.
Consciousness.
And there's a reason that I'm doing this. No, the answer is not consciousness. Who is quoted with, "Between God and me, there is no between"?
Emerson.
Shroud.
Troward.
Somebody I've never really talked about.
Oh, well.
Between God and me. It's Emerson.
Meister Eckhart.
Oh, no.
Eckhart.
Wow.
Yes.
You're the winner
yes,
today.
Wow.
It increased
That's
from
a great
mine.
And it increased this week. Make sure you write that on your worksheet. Note that I didn't say, make sure you tithe that back to the center.
Right.
Tithe it to where you are spiritually nourished. So great. Yeah, between God and me, there is no between. It's one of my favorite quotes. Meister Eckhart.
Very good.
Meister Eckhart. Look him up. I've never really talked about Meister Eckhart. Maybe I will. Maybe it's time.
And in his day, you could be burned at the stake for saying you were God.
Oh yeah. You could, for sure. That
It's
was
actually the
definitely.
basis of Protestantism.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's got 4 paths that you actually take. There's the via positiva, via negativa, via creativa, and the via transformia.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. I believe that we are that this. I mean, if you're looking at the Protestant Reformation, I believe that New Thought is even the next step of that entire line of thinking. That is just going deeper and deeper and deeper. So anyway, forgiveness. Let's talk about forgiveness. How many of you are quick to forgive?
Compared to.
More and more these days.
More and more these days?
more.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so many of you may have heard this. Holding on to anger is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yes.
I've heard that, right? What I found interesting is many people, they attribute that quote to Buddha. It's actually anonymous. Nobody really knows where it came from. I looked it up online. I'm like, nobody really knows. But you see it online, like they do those graphics on Facebook, and it always says Buddha. I'm like, no. Yeah, holding on to anger is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. A lack of willingness to forgive is exactly that same concept. It's exactly that same concept. So, why then, for those of you who may have answered that you are not quick to forgiveness, let me ask you this question. And this is for anybody to answer. What is the benefit of not forgiving?
You get to be right.
You get to be right.
You have a story.
You have a story.
Right.
Victim
Reason.
status.
Victim status.
totally.
Yeah.
You have something to blame.
It's a sense
You
of
have something
justice
to
that,
blame.
you know, they didn't
Control.
deserve to be forgiven.
Oh, interesting. A sense of justice. They
Oh.
didn't deserve to be forgiven.
Control.
Control. Oh, there's a big one.
You get attention.
You get attention.
Mm.
All right.
Comfort.
Comfort in what way?
It's a limitation, isn't it?
Ah. Yeah. Just like I talked about. We set up our comfort zones, that place of limitation that we are not willing to go beyond. Forgiveness is a similar thing. Not stepping into forgiveness is wrapping yourself up in another comfort zone. Because you've now, basically, if you are going to that place of, I am a victim of this situation, the perpetrator of my victimization, I have now a protective layer, that keeps me from that. Right? So, any other thoughts around what do we gain? What do we gain from not stepping into forgiveness?
We really don't gain anything.
Don't gain
Not
anything.
positively.
Not positively.
You avoid responsibility.
You avoid responsibility. Oh, what am I talking about all the time? Responsibility.
You get to litigate.
You get to litigate. The truth is, and so to be perfectly fair, there have been times in my life when I was not willing to forgive. So I stand up here as, not somebody who has always just been this, glorious creature standing before you, always in forgiveness. No, there were times when I really held a grudge. I was a miserable little kid. And really held a grudge. But, the way I look back on it now is that if I didn't feel that I had gained something from holding on to that grudge, I wouldn't have done it. So that's why it's important to start to recognize, if you're not willing to step into forgiveness, start looking at what do you think you're gaining from it. What do you think the benefit is from it? Because I can guarantee you, 100% of the time, it will be something that is outside of the self, that causes a separation between you and your creative source. And that being the case, when you align with your creative source, you'll realize there was nothing to forgive in the first place.
Yes.
Who said power? Did you say power? Somebody said power.
Control.
Control. Power, control, right? If we so not stepping into forgiveness might have you feel like you are in power.
A powerful victim.
Powerful, you're in control of and it's totally related to story.
Yeah.
Right? It's the story we're telling ourselves to convince ourselves that we have power in this situation. Yes.
Sounds like world governments.
No doubt.
Really? No, it's the power and control.
Yeah.
That's what's wrong. That's what's wrong.
I would tend to agree with that.
Lee says you get to live in drama.
You get to live in drama. Oh,
Drama.
And actors love to live in drama. Actually, actors are some of the people who least like to live in drama, which is why they take it to the stage. Right? Yeah. Well, if it is from the sense of it's a way of gaining power, here's a concept to maybe consider around that. Where does your power come from? It comes from one place. It comes from one place. It is not ever, there's never any power in the story. Ever. Ever. Never. Oh. So when you're ready to release the story, which is all you're doing in the act of forgiveness. You're releasing the effect of the story. With the recognition that power comes from one place. It comes from the creative source, universe. Well, if you want to call it God, I don't care. Call it whatever you need to call it, but that's where power comes from. It's one of the attributes of the divine, is power. It is never gained by turning on someone, ever. I loved this quote that she had in the book. Harboring a grudge completely blocks our ability to have peace of mind. And it's really interesting. Note the energy in the room right now. Because I think are we checking in? Are we looking and saying, is there any place that I have really engaged in that I have to check in? Because this thing about forgiveness, it's challenging for a lot of people. And I love that she says, for some people, this is just as challenging as tithing, if not more so. Because we want to have that story, we want to hold on to the story. Because it's a misunderstanding of the concept of power. Somebody gonna say something? Yeah.
I think all four of her subjects come down to one concept, that life works by the promises we make and keep. And when we forgive, we make a promise to ourselves. Because to me, I compare all forgiveness to the idea of bumping into somebody on the sidewalk that I don't even know. Forgiveness is for me. They walk away. Just like every other incident, every experience I have no idea how they experienced it. So the forgiveness is for me because they're now on to something else.
Yeah.
And if I'm stuck there, that's where I am. That's not where they are. So I must, and I have 2 ex-wives. And strangely enough, in the week of tithing, I met up with an old girlfriend that I knew 29 years ago. And she reminded me that she had an abortion at my expense. I had forgiven myself and forgotten. She reminded me, and was telling me that she was forgiving me, and I was kind of wondering of really why I was being told then. But I had that conversation with her and a few other things where I had let go, and we, after 29 years, had a conversation between strangers that was really about letting go. And to me, it is something that's taken me a long time to get there because I've had and still have baggage too.
Right.
But forgiveness has been one of those things that I learned even through objectivism, through Ayn Rand, who is she doesn't have spirituality in her concept.
Yeah.
But for myself, selfish is rational self-interest. So it's not about being self-indulgent. It's about that other concept of taking care of myself.
Yeah. Well, and the degree to which you take care of yourself is the capacity to which you can care for others. If you cannot take care of yourself, you can't. I mean, this is kind of, I'm trying to think of, because I know I've already really stated this tonight, but I'm trying to, it's like being framed in my mind in a different way, and I don't know that I'm accurately stating it. But the concept of being selfish is the ultimate act of selflessness. That's really what I believe.
Yeah.
Because once you step into taking care of yourself, the thing about it, I believe, is that if you are truly taking care of yourself, you automatically are taking care of other people in everything you do, without ever having to be asked.
Yeah, I think tithing and all the others, really, if we accept it as a promise we've made, and we're just going to keep it because we said we would, that will make our lives richer just by the very fact that we do what we say we will do.
Yes, and you know what that is a great definition for, doing what we say we do, what we say we will do? It's a definition of integrity.
I like that too.
And integrity means wholeness. So when we're living a life that is whole and complete, we are doing the things we promised to do. Now, is there ever a time when you can change the promise?
Oh, renegotiating is part of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
Be clear that you can renegotiate.
Yeah. If I'm late, if I can call up and say, hey, I'm on my way, I'm late, that's renegotiating.
Yeah.
And you talked about not paying your bills, well, then you can renegotiate too. And Rogers are great for that one.
Well, you know what? My experience has been, if you are upfront, you know, because here's what happens sometimes when people can't pay their bills. They go into that fear place and they don't communicate. I have found they will always work with you one way or another if you communicate with them.
Yeah.
And the people that go into fear and they don't communicate, they're the ones who get in the most hot water around it, right? Communicate, be open, be honest, be transparent about where you are, and then be willing to know, no matter what, you're always cared for. Brian, were you going to say something?
Just on the word selfishness, if you kind of look at what it means, it's at the expense of someone else.
Yeah, and
so taking care of yourself is not an expense of anybody else.
Right.
You're not taking from someone else.
Yeah, and I am taking liberty with the word itself, just so you know that I'm clear on that. But it's because it's not really about selfishness, taking, you know, hoarding.
Yeah.
It's about self-care. You must take care of yourself. Yes.
That would be part of letting yourself receive divine love.
Yeah.
It's,
Yes. How many of you are open to receiving love? How many of you block it from yourself by not going to a place of forgiveness? You don't have to raise your hand. Just something to think about. Because if you're not going to a place of forgiveness, you can block that flow of love to you real fast. Real fast. Yeah, I wrote here, forgiveness is something we do for ourselves. In big, bold, capital letters, I wrote that. It is something we do for ourselves. Let me go to Carrie, and then we'll go to the internet.
And I think that something that struck me in the book is forgiveness of self. The more I forgive myself, the more I am open to forgiving others.
Yeah.
If I can't forgive myself, I can't even begin to acknowledge.
Right, and that's self-care.
Yeah.
That is absolutely self-care.
Yeah.
And ultimately, here's what I believe to be true about forgiveness. You are never, ever, 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 ever forgiving someone else. The act of forgiveness is always about the self, 100% of the time. Because if I step away from the blame around that cruddy relationship, I was going to use a different adjective, that horrific relationship that I was in 13 years ago, if I step away from the place of blame, then I realize the only forgiveness work I have to do is for myself. It had absolutely nothing to do with him. It was all me. And I have to be willing to step into forgiving me. Because I do have a comment on the internet. Can I go there first?
Yeah.
Great.
Two things, actually.
Yes.
First, Helen says selfish is about being self-full.
Self-full, yeah.
Right? Self-full.
Great.
Second,
Yes.
you know, I've heard many times that forgiveness is really about forgiving yourself and it's for you. You do it for yourself. And I never really quite really understood that until I love her sense of humor. I'm age 139 and she says, you know, looking back on what that person did, you might be inclined to say, I have a right to my anger. Bad things have happened because of this person. And a case could be made for that position. Perhaps you do have a right to your anger. You also have a right to take a screwdriver and stick it into an electrical socket. But whom would you be hurting by doing so? It's like, okay, I get it.
And so, holding on to anger is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so what I'm really starting to understand now and accept and allow is that, okay, so, if forgive my parents for everything that I thought they did wrong, but it's not. It's about forgiving myself for thinking that they did anything wrong in the first place.
Yeah.
And seeing them as the perfection that they are.
Absolutely. And can we all tonight collectively agree that everybody that we encounter is doing the best job they can?
I'd like to believe that. But in a way, I think when we're saying these things, we may be ignoring some of the horrible cruelty that's being done. Horrible rapes of innocent children, and it's hard to see it that way. Maybe God can see it that way, but it's sometimes too much of a stretch for me.
Okay. Have you read the book yet?
No, I haven't finished it.
Okay.
I'm about a third of the way.
Okay. It's just interesting that you bring that up because she actually addresses almost that exact same thing.
Okay. I
Yeah.
guess I have to read it then.
Yeah. Take a look at it.
That would be good.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I was going to anyway, but you're not going to talk about it.
Well, I wasn't really planning on going down that road, but because now I have to go find it.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Because part of what she says, where is it?
I think page 130.
Which is funny because I'm exactly on that page right now. Oh, here we go. Let's see what she says. Now, sometimes when I discuss these issues, people ask if we are responsible for what happens to us. Were you responsible for being sexually abused as a child? She was sexually abused as a child. The honest answer is that I don't know. I suppose some people might say that small children are exempt from some of life's laws. Others, if they believe in reincarnation, might believe it was the result of something done in a past lifetime. I don't know the answer to that question. I do know, however, that reframing the abuse has helped me achieve peace of mind, and that is a joy. It's not uncommon that when we discuss this philosophy, and the basic premise of this entire philosophy is your thoughts create your experience. Your thoughts, your beliefs create your experience. And it always gets brought up. Children. What about children? And to what degree are they responsible for cruel things that may have happened to them or are happening to them? For instance, so let's talk about my previous downstairs neighbor, who, in my estimation, is quite cruel to her 4-year-old daughter. And people will ask the question, what is it that brought that into that little girl's experience? And unfortunately, I actually have the same answer as Edwin Gaines. I don't know. I don't know.
We talked about this in one class, Jonathan. We talked about it possibly being a collective consciousness as well that is affecting.
It could be any number of things. There's a lot, there's a lot that's going on that we're completely unaware of. 90% of our own personal thinking is on the subconscious level, and 10% we're conscious of. That's kind of what they say, right? But 100% of your thinking creates your experience. So you're not aware of 90% of what's going on. But as we become more aware, then we can do something about it. As we start to ingrain new habitual thoughts, as we start to ingrain new tendencies of thought, consciously we're ingraining the subconscious to create something new. So that our habit is constructive living.
But I don't want to fall into believing that everything that happens to someone, no matter how terrible it was their fault because their thought thinking brought it about.
And I'm not talking at all about fault. I'm not talking about blame, and I'm not talking about fault. I'm talking about responsibility. At some point, what is the ability to respond? You cannot do anything about what has happened in the past. It's done. It is absolutely done. What is the opportunity now to know something new and to change the experience now moving forward? And and I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying this is an easy thing to do, especially when it does come down to severe abuses. But if we all step into what can I do now moving forward rather than who's to blame for that experience, that's when we shift the entire subconscious and we shift the collective consciousness of the entire planet, and we change the whole world like that.
And that's responsibility.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, Charlotte.
Two things. Yes, that word responsibility is so connected, and people immediately go on to, I have to take on the weight, and this is my burden, and so on. And behind that is guilt and shame and blame and right and wrong and all of that. But it literally is. It's used. I don't know what the roots are, but I found it very useful to see it as ability to respond, number one, and two, in terms of biological systems, our ability to respond has to do with our being able to adapt with a new environment.
Yeah.
So that is really critical. So that is one thing. The second thing is, when let's say someone is looking at a situation and it's part of their job to do that, a social worker or whatever. So there you have to assess the situation. So you may be thinking certain things, but feelings of blame are not attached, or good and bad are not attached, but as to what is going to be the best for the child or the parent, etc. So one can actually look at a situation that is difficult and complicated, but it's the feeling aspect, how much one is hooked into that.
Yeah.
I just finished reading a book called A Long Way Gone by a young man who was in Sierra Leone, and he was, there was a civil war broke out, and all his family was, all his village was attacked, and he went with 6 boys, and they were living in the forest and trying constantly to escape death, and then finally they got caught by the army, and they were taken in as boy soldiers. And what was fascinating to me is that he was such it was just obviously a deeply caring, sympathetic child, but quickly through, and I can't say it was just because he was given drugs, but it was kill or be killed, and they were talking about him taking revenge on the fact that his family was massacred by these people, and it was all desensitizing and everything. And he was 2 years there, and then the UN came and they took him to a place, and what I saw was a redemption. I saw that there's the plasticity of the human consciousness, depending on what you're fed, what your circumstances are, and how it can be completely transformed. What they did was they desensitized so that he was killing without pity, every day, going in and slaughtering everybody in the village. And then when they brought them back, the social workers just kept saying, "It's not your fault. It's not your fault." And he didn't want to hear that, and he went switching from feeling no pity to having the nightmares of, feeling the impact of what he did, and then to the state of forgiving himself. Yeah. It's a book I think anybody should read, because it just brings the whole idea of good and evil, who's good, who's bad. That was just the clearest story to me, that it's that about human beings, that the grace at the heart of people, you can go one way or the other, all on circumstances.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. I would be interested in that book, if you can let me know.
What's it called?
Yeah, what the title is.
Long Way Gone.
Long Way Gone.
It's beautifully written.
I'm looking for some light summer readings. As soon as this course is over, I'm looking for something to escape,
No, it's really fascinating story. You can't put it down.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I used to live in Welland, and I had a small little theater company, and Welland's population 45,000 people, so you can imagine how urban it was. But it was just by fluke that I was cleaning one day, this woman who was passing by, she had to have been in her 40s, and she had this little boy that was less than a year old. In fact, he was 4 months old, and she asked me if I needed any help. And one of the things I knew that I needed somebody to be an administrator, right? And so while I was doing that, I was carrying around her son and actually working on some of my lines and getting my classes ready. I then put out an ad for some instructors, some youth instructors. And lo and behold, her adult daughter applied. They hadn't spoken to each other. In fact, her 9-year-old daughter also, through the adult daughter, it was court ordered that she was not allowed to speak to her children, actually, her 9-year-old daughter. And so it was quite difficult to actually see this forgiveness that was actually taking place in this little, as small as this room is here, it was a small repertory theater. All it was not meant to be big budget stuff, it's theater all around, all aspects. And somehow, this daughter, and we did improvisation. I love improvisation. You have to present a problem and you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It must be resolved in 22 minutes. And somehow, they got talking and eventually allowed the 9-year-old daughter to come in and join the theater company, to have contact with the mom on supervise, and it was just one of these things that this transition happened to where this 9-year-old daughter just turned out to be one of the most amazing souls. And the way, if you've ever read the Arcanians by Aristophanes, written 50 years before Christ, and having a young 9-year-old doing this classical piece, and it was amazing, and yet this whole family became healing. It literally healed just through forgiveness alone. And then it was amazing, through those tears, it was amazing so much laughter that came from it.
Great. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Love and forgiveness. Love and forgiveness. Those are the two things that I believe will change this entire world.
Yes.
Full embodiment of love and forgiveness. And I will go to, I still want to honor that there are things that we will perceive, that we will see in the world that will be difficult. I had a very difficult time for 18 months with my neighbor. And recognizing that there was potentially abuse happening down there. But I had to step back and say, what is my responsibility in this situation? In that if it's in my experience, I'm responsible for it. If it's in my experience, I am responsible for it. So I have an opportunity there to trust and know. First of all, on the conscious, prayerful level, praying, knowing that that child is fully secure and cared for and loved, no matter what. The other aspect of responsibility in society is to call Children's Aid and say, this is going on, and to not be afraid of that either. You know, and I'll tell you, when I was in class last year, I was talking about it a little bit, and I was in a lot of fear around actually calling Children's Aid. I got over it. Finally, I said, I'm over it. It is more important for me, in my responsibility nature, to make sure that that is being handled appropriately. And I still pray. I still pray for the well-being of that child.
And the mother.
And the mother. Because they're both party to the situation, right? There's clearly, for me, what I heard happening down there, there's clearly some issue that is totally unrelated to the child that mother is experiencing that is now being taken out on the child. That's my perception. And at the same time, I want to honor the fact that I don't know the story. I don't know all the facts of the story. I really don't know what was going on down there. And my perception may be totally off base. But if I stay prayerful in the health and well-being and love of that entire situation, then I have to trust that's what shows up. Yeah.
And yes, and what you're doing is you're responding to the irritation that you're experiencing, and you're noting that to be a call to prayer. It's really that simple, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So I'll take a breath. Sometimes it's just good to take a breath. Let me go to Judy first.
I was just going to say, how many times do we hear about people who have gone through very difficult childhoods and have excelled at something in spite of that, and it has propelled them into something very good for humanity.
Yeah.
She,
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
it's part of her entire story.
And maybe a lot of us in this room,
Yeah. And the truth is, even if somebody tells you, you don't know their story.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other thing that I want to, I'm very, very well aware that I don't know any of y'all's story. Y'all.
Let alone our past lives.
Exactly. Margaret.
It's just a word thing. Responsible for or responsible to.
How do you mean?
You said you're responsible for that.
I'm responsible for my own experience of it
Okay.
and how I respond.
So that you're responsible to it.
Yeah, I mean it's
I know it's kind of fun.
it's
but-
it's a
When you
yeah.
said before, it sounds like,
Remember, Jonathan,
Yeah.
I
it
put
was
you
my
through that one
fault,
too.
Yeah, it's a semantic thing. A little bit because I would say I'm responsible for my experience of it.
Yeah.
But to the situation.
To the situation in the world of form,
To it.
then
rather than for
I'm
it.
responsible to call children's aid.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. But also responsible to the fact that it is in your realm.
Sure,
But as being responsible for it.
I am. But
Sometimes there's a bit of a trouble with that.
Well, you know what? Maybe it's clear. Maybe this will clarify it. If I'm responsible for something, then I might be blaming myself for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm responsible to it, I'm looking for the solution.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the point, yeah.
Yes, that's my point.
That's part of taking care of yourself,
Yeah.
as well as the forgiveness, because when you take care of other people, you're being irresponsible for yourself.
What?
Yeah, it's not your job to carry other people through life. You're supposed to take care of yourself. Be responsible for yourself. The appropriate thing is to be responsible to others. And the real dilemma is when somebody passes away and we feel responsibility for that we have a hard time with forgiveness because we own what they did instead of owning what we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a deep concept because responsibility is a big idea.
It is, but it's very funny. Well, it's not funny. It's of course very appropriate that because it's been in my consciousness that exact idea recently. It's just interesting that you brought that up because it's actually given me something that I have to think about now that I'm not in a position to talk about, and it's something that I've got to get a point of view around. So I'm not going to go any further into that discussion right now. But it's some stuff that I have to do some personal work on. So thank you for bringing that up. So, forgiveness. Forgiveness. As with tithing, she writes this, as with tithing, we must learn to forgive freely, joyfully, and completely. What does completely mean?
No matter what.
No matter what. Who said that?
Meister Eckhart.
No!
I was like, oh no,
Tom
wait,
Costa.
Edwin, no,
Tom Costa.
Something, no?
Tom somebody.
Dr. Tom Costa, yes.
Tom Costa.
Palm Springs.
Dr.
Palm Springs.
Number 16.
Who, by the way,
Number 16.
those of you who know Dr. Ken Gordon and Dr. Deb Gordon, here's the connection. Dr. Tom Costa was their teacher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is he the older gentleman, the older minister?
No.
Ken Gordon?
No, the first
Tom
one.
Costa is no longer on this plane of experience.
So he's much older.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Ken Gordon is the Pope of religious science. He's the spiritual leader of the entire organization. So I joke that he's the Pope of our philosophy.
Gordon?
He wears a pointed, open-ended hat.
Anyway, so completely means completely. Completely. Now, how many of you have heard of the concept of radical forgiveness?
No.
So radical forgiveness, the thing about radical forgiveness, which is the only kind of forgiveness I will tell you I ever try to experience in my life now. After having experienced and gone through the process of going through radical forgiveness, you can look it up online. I'm not a radical forgiveness instructor or anything like that. I'm not a facilitator for that kind of work. But I do know some people, and I've actually thought about we should bring them in here and have people experience radical forgiveness.
Let's have
Wow, yes.
Sounds
good.
This is the thing about radical forgiveness. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying this may be hard for people to hear. In radical forgiveness, the point is to get to the point of view that there was nothing to forgive in the first place. It is really about releasing all attachment to your story. It is about releasing all attachment to any effect that holding on to this has had in your experience. Because if you're holding on to something, you're creating new cause, it must show up in your experience. So radical forgiveness is really about taking the cause completely out of the equation and replacing it with only one cause. And that cause is love. That cause is light. That cause is divine action always. There is nothing to forgive if you're truly embodying divine action in your life. See, it's interesting. Note the energy of the room when I say this is what radical forgiveness is all about, because people then start going to, I don't think I could ever do that.
And yet unity, when we talk about unity, that's what we're saying. There is only one.
There is only one.
And when
That
people,
together.
when people are doing like that mother did, she's operating from her place of pain, which she hasn't addressed and released, and so she's passing it on through anger, through belittling. And that's the case if you find with anything that people label a sin.
Yeah.
They're coming from a place of hurt, shame, anger.
Yeah.
So we would want to release that so we don't perpetuate it.
Right. Yeah. And we're all, we're all on a journey. We're all of us on a journey. So start to honor the journey. And you said fear. Fear.
Anything that isn't love is fear. That's what I heard anyway.
Pretty much. Anything that isn't love is fear.
Of course, in miracles.
Jonathan, you had talked about your relationship in a very vague way, and you had forgiveness in the tone of it. In Edwina's book, she talks about her husband with a bit of vengeance.
Yeah, she does.
And I kind of wondered about that. Is that really forgiveness when she has to put it in a book that he was a drug addict?
The first.
Well, first of all,
and that it was his fault that her credit cards got overdrawn?
But what she gets to is
take responsibility.
she took responsibility
But she mentioned
for
it in the book, so isn't that kind
as
of
a teaching tool.
I think so.
It's a fact.
Yeah,
It's a
it's-
fact.
and it is a fact in the world of form.
right?
They were in the relationship. She was not paying attention. There's her ability to respond to have that recognition, as she then was given the information. Oh, he's racked up $60,000 in debt. Maybe there's a little anger around that at first, but in the act of forgiveness and taking responsibility for how to move forward, then I do believe that's true forgiveness. She's just using it.
Well,
as a
she sort of
teaching tool.
completes it with his letter back.
Yes.
Yeah.
But still, in radical forgiveness, would you say it again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
I can still talk about the anger that I went through at the end of that relationship 13 years ago.
Like, without details. Right?
Well,
If you actually
well,
forgive it, then you can
It's not
kinda
even
let
about the
go.
details. It's about what is the energy behind the details. I can talk about the details. What is the energy that I experience behind the details? Because that does not hold a charge for me anymore.
Right. Well, and I heard that what you said, very different than when I read Edwina's comments. They sounded like she was bringing it up to remind us all of what he did.
Yeah, well, I don't know
But
about
that's your
that.
perception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, as an ex-husband, yeah.
So
Both of us on the other side.
So you're layering. So let's just be clear.
absolutely.
You're layering on your own energy onto her story.
Oh, sure.
That's your energy.
Sure, I was him. I was him. I was what?
Send your exes, each of them, $3,000 today, and see what
I was
happens.
just trying to think of what did I have in comparison to the drug habit. Like what did I do that would have been so bad? We'll be reminded of.
I thought she was just fine.
Jonathan,
yes.
she speaks of life with the same vigor. For example, with the jar of olives,
Oh, yeah.
or when she didn't have money to buy food, and her daughter, she said, well, I stood there for half an hour filling those darn coupons out. And that is what makes it come through. That's her energy.
You know what I'm going to suggest to you, actually, because she tells that same story, I'll tell you. She tells the same story pretty much in every talk she ever gives. Look her up on YouTube. You can find her all over YouTube. And she
heard a bit of her
a lot of these stories she tells on YouTube. And I think you'll get a sense that there really is not any animosity or anger.
Oh no, I get
that
her
she's holding
vulnerability from it
Yeah.
too, and her human, like she's gone through this, and we're hearing that she's overcome it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I love that she brings up this concept. It's so Southern. Well, bless their hearts. You heard that?
Yeah.
I love that. You can say anything about anybody as long as you follow it up with, well, bless their hearts. It's yeah. I mean, it is. It's
all over.
It's such a, well, I guess really now it's becoming a real U.S. kind of thing.
And I understand that can also mean, well, that's that idiot.
Yeah, pretty much. Was there a hand over here?
There was.
Yeah?
I'm not sure if I need to speak. But even in saying it out loud, you're changing. Even if you're saying, well, bless their hearts, and you want to say, well, bless their idiots, well, guess what? You're blessing their hearts, so it still works.
Yes.
It does.
It really does.
Okay,
so I will say what I was going to say, which I thought was something that I appreciated. And I can't remember if it's Edwene or if it's Catherine Ponder, but the idea of when I was stuck in needing to forgive and not being able to do it, and then giving it over to God, let God forgive it for me as the first step.
Yes.
Is that Edwene?
I think that is Edwene, yeah. It's so funny because when I was looking up that one thing, I saw Catherine Ponder's quote, and
She's in the same section.
Anyway, well, we can always look it
Maybe that's the deeper meaning of vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Let God take care of it.
Let God take care of it. Well, and God always does take care of it.
Exactly, but it was easy for me to third party it first,
Yeah.
and then I could bring it.
I've been part of a faith community. I've been part of Toronto East now since 2009, and I've been part of another faith community that where they have a drop-in and they do a lot of outreach, which is the reason I was actually attracted to this place. And having the opportunity, even just thankful for the voice that I've been given to sing. You were mentioning, just having that gift. I thank our great Creator for it. But there's so many things that you would see going wrong, and where I hear this, bless your heart. We actually have somebody who act the very same, will break a cookie and say if they're hungry they will eat it, which I was scared for, to actually have this of elders in a church say that about people in the community. But having that bless their heart, but there was a whole bunch of what was going on that I would get so frustrated with it, especially where I know things were wrong being done, and not having that voice to do it, and having that anger. And then Mark knows that forgiveness of not being able to actually, and carrying that forgiveness to the point where I went up to Moose Factory last year. I literally had to go to James Bay just to let it go. To the point where 2012, actually, that was my motto for the last 3 months of that year, that things were so bad for me. I didn't know how bad it was, but I literally had to let it go, to unburden myself. Go to that thin place. Go to where you find that I found that I was going to be closest with my Creator. Absorb what I need to absorb, learn from what I need to learn. And then it's funny, after 2 or 3 months of being up there, I needed to go back to these people who were abusing me. There is something about this community, this area, that no matter how we have our 2 poop towers that we have down here, as poopy as this area is, there's something in this area that calls for healing, that calls for love, that calls for hope. And it brought me back here, and I kind of like East Toronto, and it's amazing the people that are here. Thanks.
I don't know where these towers are, but
Is that right?
Yeah.
I love East Toronto too. This is the only part of the city I've ever lived in like the 18 months I've been here. Thank you for that. So here's another concept, and now you may want to call me on it. She says this: if you are not directly involved in a situation, just stay out of it. So, here I am. I've had this experience with my neighbor. Am I directly involved in that situation?
Yes.
Yes, I am. Thank you for saying that. I am, because I am present to it.
I'm not, but
Right.
you are.
None of you are responsible.
Right.
So even in my telling you, you can stay out of it.
Yeah.
It's not your responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's why gossip is so. And I must check in, and because I get it. You know, I'm not going to stand up here and say I don't ever engage in gossip. I've had my experience. I've gossiped with some of you in this room.
Oh, tell us about it.
But it does not go unnoticed by me that that is actually detrimental to my well-being. And I do find myself doing it less and less. Because it doesn't matter, you know, ultimately gossip is just trying to recount somebody else's story with the same, and here's the thing, we're usually trying to do it with the same charge and energy that it was presented to us with. So what are we doing? What are we creating and engaging in that?
You know it's not gossip if you tell the person you talked about them.
I do that all the time.
Just giving them the news.
When you tell them afterward,
Let's talk about you today.
Yeah, and I talked about you behind your back.
it's okay, isn't it?
Yeah. But you know, the capacity to be able to just stay out of a situation, that's a really great capacity to learn. It's something really great to learn to do.
You have so much extra energy.
Oh, don't you though?
I know.
Yeah.
It's just kind of nice.
So stop watching the news.
Well,
I don't watch them. I don't know.
Because so much of it
That's another
you can't do
story.
anything about, you know.
well, actually, there is absolutely something you can do about
Yeah.
what you see in the news.
Yeah.
Treat.
You can pray. You can
Right,
treat.
right.
That's, you know, because you all know, I'm a news junkie. I love watching the news.
Oh, yeah.
But I do it from the point of view of, what is there to know here? How can I affect a change in the world through my own consciousness? As I see some...
Yeah.
Right.
I'm so sorry. No, because the only news story that came to mind is that darn crack video. But what is my capacity in that moment to know the deep truth about that? First of all, I trust 100% that the truth of that situation will be revealed, and it will be for the highest good of this entire city. And if I ever go off of that track, I pray for that understanding. If I ever start slipping into, oh, did you read about what this, and what they're now starting to find? No. I trust that what needs to be revealed is revealed, and it is for the highest good of this entire community, no matter what. So, and I'm not saying y'all go start watching the news. If you don't have to watch the news. It's just, this is just who I am. But I also think that if we are afraid to watch the news, we need to look at that fear. What is it that we're really afraid of? Are we afraid that we're going to take that consciousness and allow it to have an effect on us? Because then where is the work? The work is about really stepping back into stepping out of fear. Because why? There is always the arms of grace that you can fall back into, no matter what. No matter what. So so this is for me the greatest lesson that I have ever learned, possibly in my life, and it is directly related to forgiveness, and it's a lesson that I keep having to learn over and over and over again for some reason, and that is look to the solution. Look to the solution. Don't engage in a continued discussion of the problem. And I can tell you, I will be totally transparent here in front of all of you. Some of you have seen this actually happen. Those of you who are on the board of trustees have seen me go through some of this process in board meetings where I've experienced and have engaged in a continued discussion of the problem, but you will almost Well, you know what? No, I will say 100% of the time, at some point, you will see me make the shift where I'll step back and say, what is the solution? What do we do now? How do we move forward? As long as you engage in the problem, you will keep recreating the problem.
You're stuck.
You're stuck. It's the way the conscious flow happens. It's if your thinking creates your experience, thinking about the problem creates the experience of the problem. And that's the habitual thinking that we get into. That's where we have a tendency in thought. Ernest Holmes says we have a tendency in thought, and it is affected by collective consciousness, it is affected by our past that we've decided is still affecting us now, which is a decision, and it is affecting us by everything that we're experiencing right in this moment. But we do have the capacity to consciously stop the madness. Susan Powder, do you remember her? Stop the insanity! We have the capacity to stop it. Has anybody looked at the blog? I stopped posting on the blog.
Yeah.
Did you see that I posted the Bob Newhart video?
Yes.
Awesome.
You have 80s flashbacks or what?
Hold on. Nick. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment about what you were saying. I believe very much in problem solving. I do it in my life all the time. But I really think that stating the problem is the first step. And sometimes I'll get more information and I'll find, the problem's actually more complicated than I thought. But knowing that is still empowering.
I agree with that. I don't think I said you don't ever not state the problem. What happens though is frequently people get stuck in a loop of never not stating the problem. They just keep talking about the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're stuck in
Yeah,
it.
because the
they're
solution
stuck
is
in
in the problem, just as the...
Yes, and that's also part of the great teaching of this philosophy. If there is a problem, there must be a solution, because the solution is in the problem. You cannot experience any problem that does not have a solution attached to it. You can't. Doesn't work that way. This is really, what's funny is that in a prosperity class, we've talked almost not at all about money tonight. We will get there if I ever get off of page 1 and onto page 2. So look to solutions. Forgiveness frees us from the endless loop, and this is really staying in the problem. She writes this: forgiveness frees us from the endless loop of blame and bad feelings that keeps our mind focused on all the wrong things. Turn who can I blame into how can I serve. We've talked a lot already about victimization tonight. Now, do you see potentially, now this is a rhetorical question, I don't want everybody to raise their hand, I'm assuming nobody will raise their hand. Do you see yourself as a victim? Really check in. In what areas of your life, is there any area of your life where you see yourself as a victim? Victim to circumstance, victim to your bank account, victim to people in your life, victim to anything. Do you see yourself as a victim in any area of your life? I'm about to teach you a very important lesson. That's why the room will now get quiet. If you perceive yourself as a victim in any way, you will always find a perpetrator to be victimized by. No matter what. If you perceive yourself as a victim, there will always be a perpetrator. You will be seeking the perpetrator out in everything you do. So, step into an awareness right here and right now. Make a decision right here and right now to no longer see yourself as a victim.
Yeah.
When you step back and forgive yourself for whatever it is that has led you to this place of feeling like a victim, you're going to eliminate that from your life altogether. And again, that is the ability to respond in any given situation. That's really, truly taking responsibility. It's one of the best lessons that I ever learned. If I perceive myself as a victim, I will always seek out a perpetrator. And then it made me think of a line from the musical Company. Because I can't help myself. You see what you look for, you know? You see what you look for.
That's a good idea, of course, but if it's hard to do, what tricks do you have to allow it to be easier?
There are no tricks, first of all. And really, here's the work. As I've said, at first it may be hard. It might be. Allow yourself to recognize, oh my gosh, this is hard right now. Because once you admit to yourself that there is something that you are working on, then you can allow yourself to just work on it. As you go through the experience of it, when the things show up in your life that you'd rather not experience, that's the point at which you need to have the recognition and have the wherewithal to have the recognition to say, wait, this is showing up now. I have an ability in this moment to know something different, to respond in a different way that is not in line with the habitual thinking that has created this in the first place. So at first, absolutely, I'll tell you, I have done some hard work in my life in terms of changing my conscious thinking or my subconscious thinking around. And at a point, you have ingrained a new belief, you have ingrained a new tendency and thought, and one day you're going to wake up and say, wow, everything is working great, and I don't have to think about it anymore.
Oh yeah, cool.
Here's what happens, I think, sometimes. People get into it, and they look ahead and they see that it might be a struggle, and they say, I don't want any of that, but then they stay right in the same place because they're not willing to do the work. You have to be willing to do the work. And to be tenacious in that. Be tenacious in it. So, yeah.
And that's the practice,
That
right?
is-
It's really amazing.
To be
When-
willing to see it differently, is that it?
Well, yes, but it's also really amazing and empowering when you are practicing these principles and practicing these practices, and then all of a sudden one day you go, wow, like I'm doing it. And things are different.
Okay.
And it's the practice.
It's the practice.
And it
All
comes
the
down to
time.
choice.
It does come down to choice. Yeah, Sharos.
You actually outlined really important steps that make it.
Hope I remember what they are.
It's okay, I do the key ones.
Go ahead. Thank you.
The first one, you're right. It's a choice. You make the choice, and you can make that choice gently, out of curiosity, out of play, out of what if, just like we were doing with tithing. But you said, if I perceive myself as a victim, I will always seek out a perpetrator. So step back, forgive yourself for putting yourself in that situation. And I think that's crucial because that releases all of the condemnation, the shame, the blame, And then you also said, at some point, you carried on, having the wherewithal to have the recognition, because it's difficult to recognize, oh, this is so, if that's not what you were thrown to do. So then, actually, here would be, the wherewithal. And here it can be a bit difficult, and if it's difficult, treat. So it really having information that, having the wherewithal can be a stumbling, can be a place, so be open that, I've got that piece of information, so I can recognize not having the wherewithal. And so those are, I feel, truly significant steps.
Yeah, thank you. Glad you wrote those.
Yes.
But it's one of those things
It's
like
going to divine your
sometimes I'll rattle things off because I have come to a point now for myself where I've kind of just ingrained like the habit of whatever, of looking towards what is the solution here. Here's another way to look at the things that do show up in your life. And this I'm grateful to Reverend August Gold for. She, in a talk, said something that resonated with me once very deeply. Was it August Gold?
And who was she a teacher of?
Well, she's a minister within Centers for Spiritual Living. She had a small center in New York City. She has disbanded that. I think she's just doing touring now. She said this. If I can, I'm just hesitating because I'm trying to remember exactly how she phrased it. Of course, I bring it up and now I can't remember how she phrased it. Whatever is happening to you is happening through you and for you. When I took on that recognition, whatever is happening to me is happening through me and for me. What I began to realize is that anything that ever shows up in my experience is an opportunity to learn. Any perpetrator that I may have created in my life is an opportunity for that person to be my teacher, for me to recognize my own self-victimization. So, starting to look and see where in my life are my teachers.
And be grateful.
And be grateful for the teachers.
Thank God for assholes.
And you know what? Seriously. They are a gift. Because they tell you more about yourself than they tell you about them.
Gil, there's a new driving mantra.
Oh, it's totally changed. Totally changed.
Well, any and everybody can be victimized. Right? Being victimized is something that can happen just by circumstance.
But it's a
being
conscious.
Being a victim is a choice.
Being a victim is a choice.
Yes.
Being a victim is a choice. If you look at an event in your experience as something that you have been victimized by, then you are victimized by it. If you look at it as an opportunity to know something deeper, you cannot be victimized by it. It is something new to know. Because here's what's going to happen. Things are going to show up in your life.
Yeah.
I will say, shit happens. What do you do when it shows up?
You claim it.
You know, I don't really want to stand up here and say shit happens, because at some point stuff happens.
It's called living.
It's
your
called,
life,
yeah.
Right?
And I'm now
Stop it.
Take a breath.
I'm so excited by this. Clearly. Really, it was about, for me, starting to recognize that I had an opportunity in everything I experience. Life was no longer a challenge when everything is an opportunity. What needs to be known here? What is my capacity in this moment to know something deeper? Yes.
So the teacher once told me, she said, whatever happens to you, it's because there's something incomplete that you have, and these are just opportunities for you to get complete about those.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's gonna be, and if that actually goes in line with, if 90% of your thinking is subconscious, anything that has not been resolved is gonna show up in your experience as an opportunity to resolve it consciously. What a great way to, approach life. And that's why I can step back when I feel like I've created some ill effect in my life. I can now step back and laugh at it and say, look what I created. What can I know now?
It's coming up to be released.
Exactly.
And with God, the infinitesimally small and the infinitesimally large are the same.
Yeah.
So when you have a cold, you deal with it. So when you have another issue, just deal with it.
Yes. That's why one of the things we say frequently is, God does not know the difference between a hangnail and cancer. It's just something in the world of form that is being experienced, and we have the capacity to consciously change it.
And we have the power.
Absolutely. Because we are tapped into the all power. The all power. The one power. The source of all creation. And if it shows up in your experience, it was created, and you can recreate in that moment when you recognize it, if that's your choice. It's the other thing. We are at choice. Do you have to do any of this? No.
Jonathan, when the evening started, the energy level was really high, unusually high for the past year that I've been taking classes. And I want to say that in that high was the energy of forgiveness. It's kind of like the energy of they just won the lottery. If you had, if everybody in the room owed you money and you just won the lottery, you would say, you're all forgiven. And that was the energy in the room that was here at the beginning of the evening.
Interesting. Thank you. All right. I have a big quote I'm now going to talk about. Because I think, for me, this was also another life-changing quote in this book. And I'm going to read, it's kind of a paragraph, so just bear with me for a moment. Edwin writes this: "Now, so that I am clear, when I say you must forgive people, I don't mean that you need to endlessly put up with bad behavior. You are permitted to stand up for yourself and what you believe to be right. So if people have hurt or mistreated you in the past and you suspect that they would do it again in the future given the chance, there is no law that says you have to keep them in your life. You do, however, have to forgive them for what they did." You are at choice. Now, does she exclude anybody from this? No. So when I talk about friends and family, if you feel like there is a blood relative of yours that is going to continue to behave badly, get rid of your relatives. If you need to.
I did.
Yeah?
In 2006.
You know,
Love them and let them go.
I bring it up though because it's a challenging aspect for a lot of people, because again, we are socialized to believe that we must maintain these relationships. And it is not true.
Yeah.
It's a decision we've made. Shahrose.
You know, I've heard this so many times, and I do believe this, and I've taken action, and yet I have experienced fear in anticipation of meeting up with the person, and then having to be there for the person rather than myself. And yet when I go through forgiveness, and I do forgive, and I totally appreciate that this person is on their journey, and that it is my inability to break a pattern, you know, I still find myself not being able to be in the place that, you know what, there is the potential of me never meeting this person. You see, and so that is still not buying into the fact that because they're family, I don't need to ever see them. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. Now, one can say, oh yes, you know, you could well meet the person or whatever because you're in touch with their children, but still, in the same way, I needn't. I mean, everything is possible. I can potentially joyfully release this and know that the other person is in the place they need to be, and it's not my responsibility. It's not mine to do.
Right. So in the potential of meeting, what is the expectation in the meeting of this person?
Oh, it's always, you know, you're there, immediate attention, and you know, it's I'm catering to the person. Rather than speaking my truth in that this is finished, I don't want to. It is the knowing that things are not going to change, and they'll come into my world, and having to then be even more firm in establishing and saying no in different ways. Yeah. It's a boundary issue.
Yeah, you know what? So here's what's occurring to me right in this moment. The reminder.
Or it was a boundary issue.
Yeah, the reminder that even if you never have contact with this person again, to the degree that you have not forgiven this person, and if you're holding on to it in any way, this is a lesson for all of us. If you're holding on to it in any way, who is ultimately receiving the most harm from that consciousness? And so the capacity to be able to forgive and move on does not necessitate a meeting with that person. Does not necessitate any of that. And I'm only hesitating and kind of going into my own thing now, as I start to recognize in my own life where I need to do that. That's the only reason that I'm actually hesitating right before all your eyes. Is that it's a moment of recognition for me. Because whatever is happening to me, it's happening through me and for me. I'm not trying to take away.
No. And I'm sort of also knowing that to the degree that part of the picture may well be that I'm caught into his drama of seeing him as him not being capable. You know. Which is all fine. This can all be released.
Yeah.
And that, but it's all about it's your perception. I have the same situation with family members where I've chosen to back right away, but there will be occasions when we will be in the same room, and I just don't engage with them anymore.
Well,
I smile.
Yeah,
and
it's
step back.
not just my perception in that they're literally
Glomming
seeing
onto
me and just come shower, just
But if you
hug
don't-
me and then
But if you just don't engage,
How
I don't
can
know. I
you-
don't know.
Yeah,
it's
you
hard.
don't know.
Here's ultimately what I think is. It's gonna sound so trite. Here's the answer. Just gotta do more conscious work. Gotta do more prayer.
Yeah, release and let go. Just continue.
Yeah. Margaret.
Just a thought of forgiving self.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Forgiving self that this is the way it is.
Right. And that's ultimately, like I said before, that's ultimately the only forgiveness that we're ever doing. Is forgiving self. Yeah. Also, in any given situation, one of the reasons that this quote was important to me is being able to forgive someone for what they did, and then recognizing that I don't need to continue a relationship with them, and that we're all at choice here. Trust me, if God is infinite, and we're all individualized expressions of God, you're not necessarily going to want to be around some other individualized expressions.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. You're not called on to suffer. Yeah.
But then it made me think of the Four Agreements, which is interesting because that was actually before I was going to do this. I was going to do a workshop this summer on the Four Agreements. And then Edwin canceled on us, and I thought, I'll do this. Be impeccable with your word. Always do your best. Don't take anything personally, and don't make assumptions. So, I mean, they're so seemingly simple, and yet I need to be reminded of them quite frequently still. So, look at your role. Look closely at your role in any given situation. Keeping very clear of blame and guilt, you then can begin to closely see your ability in that moment to know something new. Again, your response ability. What can you now know? How do you now respond? And then she finally gets to talking a little bit about money in this whole forgiveness thing, because really what forgiveness can be tied into is debt. Right? And if you're experiencing large amounts of debt, one of the first places that I've always looked at if I'm experiencing debt is I always look to what do I need to forgive in my life. Because as soon as I free up and allow the forgiveness to happen, the debts take care of themselves. Because there's one source There's only one source. And I don't ever presume to know how that debt is going to get cleared up, except that when I step into forgiveness, I trust that the debt gets handled. And I love that she has this concept of being clear. And this actually changed my mind too, because I used to for many, many years, I wouldn't even go out and get a credit card because I didn't want to be involved in any kind of debt situation whatsoever. Right? Now I can step back and say, you know what, I use credit wisely. I engage in the wise use of credit, as she states it, as opposed to racking up debt without any way of knowing how you'll ever pay for it. Let's just be smart. Be smart about debt. Be smart about credit. Be smart about how you're engaging in borrowing money.
Didn't you mention 2 types of debt?
She talks about, how does she put it? Because there is the wise use of credit, that's really one, and then racking up so much debt that you can't. Hold on. Oh, that's goal setting. I'm in the wrong chapter. Comfort zones, forgiveness, and then before. She calls the wise use of credit and
Bad use of credit.
and yeah, it's basically bad use of credit, burdensome debt. I'm just because I know that she had some things that were in quotes, right? Is that what you're talking about? How she kind of quoted. Forgiveness and financial debt. See, now I can't find it. Yes, it's there. It's in the book. You notice I haven't gone to the book a lot in these classes. So, forgiveness techniques. She goes then into that next thing where it talks about the 10 forgiveness or 5 forgiveness techniques. What does it take to forgive? That's the first question I'll ask before I'll talk about these specific techniques of forgiveness. What does it take to forgive? Love. That's really it. If you approach life with love, if you approach everyone you encounter with love, then there can never be a place where there is something that would even need to be forgiven, I believe. Because that's recognizing the truth about that other person. That's recognizing the divinity in that other person. It's that really for me. And when she talks about specific techniques, which you can read about in the book, when she talks about specific techniques, what do I say about technique?
Anything that works.
Technique is anything that works. And so what is it going to take for you to step into a place of forgiveness for whatever shows up in your life that you feel needs to be forgiven? So she talks about forgiveness affirmations. That's technique 1, right? Technique 2, which is actually something that I have engaged in, and I wrote it down here, kind of paraphrasing the whole section. I wrote, pray before bed, which is to say, never go to bed without forgiving whatever needs to be forgiven for your experience of that day. It's like going to bed, one of the things you learn when you get married, never go to bed angry, right? I don't know why I looked at you. I don't know why. Maybe because I performed your wedding ceremony. So that's a new lesson. Never go to bed angry. If you haven't already heard that. Sorry. Pray before bed. Never go to bed with anything that needs to be forgiven, unless you've actually forgiven it. Because here's if you understand that this philosophy is based on recreating new tendencies in thought, what happens when you're asleep?
Recreate.
You are fully immersed in your subconscious thinking. Now, some people are lucid dreamers, and they'll have conscious elements that show up, right? But the majority of what's going on is your subconscious experience. So if you set the tone for your subconscious experience before you engage in your subconscious experience, you're now recreating a tendency in thought. I have that belief. So never go to bed angry, never go to bed without forgiving what needs to be forgiven.
Okay. And you'll sleep better too.
You'll sleep better. I love that she does a complete forgiveness inventory at least once a year. And in that inventory, not just looking back at the year, but looking over your entire life. What needs to be forgiven over the course of your entire life? And that's, she relates that then, of course, to 12-step program and doing your inventory and yeah. I also like, it's so weird, since we're not a philosophy that engages in confession, the fact that she brings up, this idea of like confessing. I wrote here, confession to someone you trust. Make sure it's someone you trust. And enlisting, technique 5, enlisting the assistance of the holiest embodiment of God's love. And there it is, really stepping into love. Love is at the core and basis of all of this work. Stepping in with a compassionate heart into everything you do. And the last, so we've got 5 more minutes. I know, shocking, hey? Forgiveness is about shifting out of our human tendency to wallow in a victim state, so that our minds are clear enough to come to realize, oh my God, I can have what I want. When you step into forgiveness, you're unleashing the good in your life. If you're holding on to anything, if you're holding on to being a victim, if you're holding on to anything that needs to be forgiven, you're basically constricting the flow of all good in your life. That's really the lesson of forgiveness. It's so funny because now we've run out of time. I was actually going to do a forgiveness meditation, but we really don't have any time to do it. But I'm going to encourage you this week. Do technique number 2. That's the pray before bed. Don't go to bed with anything that has not been forgiven. Do that every night this week. And just see what happens. See if you sleep better. See what shows up in your life. See if you can unleash the greatness.
I just wanted to say, you answered a question that I was thinking about all evening. I didn't want to say talk too much about goal setting because that was last week's class, but that's really where I'm stuck.
Okay.
I'm finding this forgiveness thing sounds good. I can get into this. And I haven't read the last section, but I think I'm going to really enjoy that. It's the goal setting that's really hugely challenging.
Okay.
So praying before bed sounds like it could be the answer. That might be the way to work through it.
So can you encapsulate very quickly what you feel is happening with goal setting? Because I might be able to answer it. It may shift it like that.
I'm just getting really anxious when I go down to do these exercises.
Okay.
And even the simple things, the things I've been procrastinating for like a couple of weeks that I could do any time. Even they're just stirring a lot up in me.
Okay. Have you looked at what it is that it's stirring up in you? What is the fear? Where is the fear based?
It seems to be coming from my gut. That is one way of dealing with it.
Okay, but what is the thought behind the fear? Like, is it, well, and we don't have to get into, a whole session now. What I will suggest is start when those feelings of anxiety show up. My guess is, without knowing any of the details, my guess is you are totally unsure of the outcome. Because anxiety is related to one thing and one thing only, and that's the future.
Yeah. Can I say how I worked through that?
Yeah.
You had that exercise you asked us to do last week about stating down the things you were afraid of. And I'd done that when I read her book some time ago. And I felt that was counterproductive for what I was working on right now. So I did the imagining all the wonderful way your life would be if you had what you wanted, your goal, your desire fulfilled. and the anxiety just completely evaporated and hasn't come back. And I've just been working away on my book, and you know, it worked.
Great.
So easily.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then I'll ask you one other question. If you're feeling the anxiety, is it potentially related to, again, I'm just reaching here, is it potentially related to you haven't even broken down the goal to even smaller steps? Break even down what seems to be a small step into an even smaller step, and then just do that one thing.
That might be part of it, although I'm even stuck at the small step that's right in front of me, the one that I could do tomorrow.
Alright.
So maybe I'll do it tomorrow.
That'll get it out
Can I
of the
make a
way.
suggestion? Take the maybe out of it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Here, what's the worst that can happen? Seriously, what's the worst that could happen? I can tell you the worst that'll happen.
worst.
Here's the worst that could happen. A judgmental God outside of yourself could strike you down with a lightning bolt and send you directly to hell.
That can't happen.
Yep.
That'd be freaky.
The best thing that could happen is I'd make money.
Oh.
So the worst thing is I won't make any
Sharing with
That's why he's here.
I need that.
Yeah, you just had a CD release party too.
Yeah. Yes, his CDs are for sale, by the way, in our bookstore.
It was about making them more available for sale and getting getting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing I could do right now. Yeah.
All right. Well, here's how I think we should, has anyone in this room ever not experienced fear? Ever in your life?
This weekend.
At what point, when you experienced that fear, did you decide that the goal was greater than the fear you were experiencing? That the reward was greater than the fear?
That's it. That's what I was trying to say. Whenever it's like you can push through the anxiety when you're thinking of that it's greater to what you want.
Yeah. When you make that decision,
You want it bad enough.
when you make the decision, you will move forward.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, you will move forward.
After he reads about purpose, then he'll go back to goal setting.
Yeah.
Past fear of rejection.
Take a look at tonight. Take a look at tonight. And I'm going to tell you, I'm giving you homework. Pray before you go to bed. And see what happens. Pray for the perfection and outcome, that you are perfectly led to what serves your highest good. Because here's what also may happen. You may have so narrowly focused what you think you need to do that you've left yourself out of the concept that there's a bigger picture, and you're probably not going there because there may be something pushing you in a different direction. I don't know. Pray for the highest good and know that it is assured, and that the action will be taken. It is taken in exactly the right time. All right. Have I now thoroughly confused everyone?
No.
Does anyone have any questions? Because we're now past 9 o'clock, and I probably should wrap this up and pray us out and send you all on your way. Yes, Sharos.
It's not a question, it's saying thank you. That was very helpful with all that good and what Margaret Ann came up with and what you pondered. So I just want to thank everyone.
Well, thank you. And thank you for your willingness to share. And that's really for everyone. Thank you for your willingness to share freely and honestly and transparently and from a place of vulnerability, because we all learn from that. And I really appreciate it, because again, like for me, it makes me go, wow, where do I need to do work in my life? So thank you all very much. Read the last section for next week, which is finding your life's purpose, which Isn't that, just, even the concept, just stating that out loud, finding our life's purpose, doesn't that feel good? Awesome. All right, so I will pray us out and then we will be on our way. If you want to just relax right where you are. Recognizing that this is it right here, right now. I know that there is only one power, one source. There's only one omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent energy. It is fully expressing right here, right now. It is fully expressing by means of every single participant in this experience of the prosperity plunge. And I know that it is presented itself in a very specific way for the highest good of everyone who's encountered this tonight. And that we all take with us tonight something that deepens our experience of this thing called life. Each of us carries with us some level of evolution. We've all taken a little step further in that upward spiral of evolution. And for this, I am truly grateful. I'm grateful for this understanding. I'm grateful for this beautiful teacher, Edwin Gaines. I'm grateful for her words, and I'm grateful for the experience and the discussion and the challenge that has been presented here tonight. Recognizing that in the challenge is an opportunity for growth. And we are each of us growing beautifully, bursting forth, breaking through, and creating extraordinary lives. So in gratitude, I simply release this word, knowing it is a complete and done deal in the mind of God. I release it to that law, the perfectly corresponding law that says, yes, it is done. I let it be so, and together we say, and so it is. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
It was a great night.
Thank you. Well.